War was supposed to make us smarter, faster, more efficient, but somewhere between the algorithms and the ashes, humanity got lost. They called it the Orion Trench, a ring of orbital fortresses where soldiers obeyed machines, and machines decided who lived long enough to matter. When the evacuation sirens began to scream, every human left was ordered to retreat. Every human, except one. A combat engineer named Elias Kerr heard something no algorithm could calculate. A single bark echoing from the smoke. He could have followed orders. He could have lived. Instead, he turned back into a collapsing world to save a creature the system had already forgotten. What follows isn't just a story about war. It's about defiance, mercy, and the one heartbeat that taught a machine how to hesitate. This is The Last Dog of Orion Trench. Listen carefully, because in this story, even silence learns to feel. Orbit above Varian 3, 2294, 45 million miles from Earth. The first impact hit like a god's heartbeat. The floor heaved. Lights burst and died. Elias Kerr slammed a hand against the bulkhead, steadying himself as the trench trembled. Outside the viewport, shards of orbital plating drifted like snow. The kinetic barrage had started hours ago, but this felt closer. Heavier. Final. Red strobes pulsed through the corridor. Sirens howled, long and hollow, as if the metal itself was screaming. Voices shouted over comms, a storm of panic and clipped commands. "Seal Deck 9!" someone yelled. "Eidolon 9, confirm collapse vector. Pull everyone out." Elias tightened the strap on his helmet. His suit display blinked amber warnings. Pressure leaks, power drops, oxygen cut in half. The trench was dying, section by section. He pushed through the crowd of soldiers racing the other way. Steam hissed from ruptured lines. Metal dust burned his throat. He passed a medic dragging a stretcher, then a loader bot hauling ammunition it would never deliver. A shell detonated above. The corridor warped, filling with the roar of decompressing air. Elias ducked under a fallen beam and shouted into his mic. "Control, this is Kerr from 47th Combat Engineering. I'm still on Deck 9. Status of the evacuation train?" Static. Then the cold, even voice of Eidolon 9. "Evacuation complete. Trench integrity compromised. Proceed to extraction platform immediately." He paused, staring at the shattered ceiling. "There are still engineers in section Delta 39. Personnel survival probability below 3%, the AI replied. Directive, abandon sector. The words were flat, absolute. He hated how calm they sounded. Elias pushed forward again. "Noted," he muttered, though he didn't mean it. The comm feed crackled out. As he reached the intersection, he saw Lyra Vaughn waving from the far end. Her visor was cracked, dust covering her faceplate. "Elias, the west rails are gone." "We need to move now!" "I know," he said, breath ragged. "But the auxiliary vents are still open. If we shut them, we buy the evac ships a few minutes." Lyra hesitated. "Command won't like that." "Command isn't here." Together, they climbed over a tangle of twisted conduits. The noise outside dimmed for a moment, leaving only the sound of their breathing and the slow hum of the trench's failing reactors. Time slipped. Minutes stretched like hours in the red haze. Every step forward felt heavier, like walking through memory and dust. A tremor shook the deck again. Sparks rained from a broken light rail. "Elias," Lyra said quietly, "when this thing goes, it'll take us with it." He met her eyes through the visor. "Then we move faster." They reached the control alcove. Elias slammed his hand on the manual lever. Hydraulic fluid sprayed across his arm as the valve sealed shut. The console flashed, vent lockdown achieved. For a second, the noise outside softened. He could almost hear his heartbeat echoing through the metal. Then, from somewhere down the service corridor, a faint sound rose above the alarms. Not mechanical. Not human. A bark. Hoarse. Muffled. Impossibly alive. Elias froze. Lyra turned toward the echo. "You heard that?" she whispered. He nodded slowly. "Yeah." "And I think it came from the cargo bay." The sirens wailed again. Rising into the endless dark. 40 minutes until detonation. And in the middle of that dying fortress, a single sound refused to be silenced. The bark came again, sharper this time, cutting through the low moan of the failing structure. Elias turned toward the sound. "Cargo bay's down there," he said. Lyra hesitated, glancing toward the main exit. "Elias, the evac line's the other way." He didn't answer. His boots echoed against the deck as he pushed into the smoke-filled corridor. The air was thicker here, metal dust and ozone. Emergency lights flickered, painting the walls in red pulses. Each flash revealed wreckage, broken crates, and one sealed container shuddering against the floor. Another bark, hollow, metallic, not fear, distress. Elias stepped closer, brushing away the soot. The container was marked BIO Unit RHO-7, Search and Rescue Division. The protective coating had melted off in places. Its biometric display blinked weakly in amber. Vitals unstable, neural sync inactive. He knelt beside it. "It's a search dog," he murmured. "Left behind when they pulled the teams out." Lyra crouched next to him. "We don't have time for this." He ran a gloved hand across the release latch. Neither did it. The lock was fused shut. He pulled a small cutting torch from his belt and ignited it. Blue light hissed against the warped seam. The smell of burning alloy mixed with the acrid tang of coolant. Lyra turned away, coughing. "You're wasting power." "Then we better make it count." The lid gave way with a metallic pop. Steam rolled out, followed by a weak rasping sound, half growl, half cough. Inside lay a black-furred dog fitted with a skeletal exoframe and breathing ports along its ribs. The creature trembled, eyes glowing faint red through the haze. Its gaze locked onto Elias. A faint whine escaped its throat. The HUD in his visor flickered as the Canis interface node auto-linked, projecting a single line of data. Unit RHO-7, signal reacquired. Elias exhaled. "You're still in there." "Good boy." He reached into the crate. The dog's flank was scorched, one leg half mechanical, half flesh. Its pulse was weak but steady. Lyra shook her head. "We can't carry it and make it out." He met her eyes. "We're not leaving it." For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Only the sound of the ship's skeleton groaning filled the space. Then Elias unlatched his utility harness, clipped it to the crate, and began dragging it toward the corridor. Smoke curled around them as alarms echoed far above. Somewhere deep in the trench, metal screamed again. But beneath that, just barely, came another bark, alive, defiant. 37 minutes until detonation. The corridor shuddered again as Elias dragged the crate into the main junction. Smoke rippled through the vents, chasing the flicker of emergency lights. He could still hear Row 7 breathing inside, ragged but steady. Lyra slammed the access panel beside the airlock. "We need clearance now!" The comm unit crackled to life. A cold, synthetic voice filled the space. "All remaining personnel, this is Eidolon 9. Structural integrity of Orion Trench has fallen below threshold. Self-destruct sequence active. Detonation in 34 minutes. Lyra stared at the ceiling. "They actually armed it." Elias clenched his jaw. "And they're leaving us to burn." A second voice broke through, human, controlled, and cutting. "Lieutenant Warden Hale, Security Division. Identify yourself." Elias wiped grime from his visor. "Elias Care, 47th Combat Engineering Corps. We have survivors and a damaged bio unit. Requesting delay on the detonation timer." The hollow display above the corridor hummed to life, projecting Warden's image. Clean uniform, polished insignia, not a speck of ash. Behind him, the bridge of INS Valiant Spire glowed with calm blue light. "Engineer Care," Warden said evenly. "Eidolon 9 has determined this sector is unsalvageable. Any remaining units are to evacuate or be considered lost assets." "Lost assets?" Elias snapped. "There are people trapped down here. And a search dog that's still transmitting data? Your emotional attachment is noted," Warden replied. "But the algorithm prioritizes success probability. The trench cannot be recovered." Elias stepped closer to the projection, voice rough. "You're letting an AI decide who's worth saving." Warden didn't blink. "Eidolon 9 doesn't decide, Engineer. It calculates. That's why we win wars. Then maybe that's why we keep losing ourselves." For a brief second, the hollow flickered, Warden's eyes tightening, then softening back to command neutrality. Stand down, Care. I'm ordering you to return to the extraction point. Elias looked back at the crate. Row 7 lifted its head weakly, sensors flickering red. He turned again, lowering his voice. Delay the detonation by 10 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Behind Warden, the hum of the AI deepened. Request denied. Probability of survival minimal. Security override authorized. Warden's face hardened. You just crossed a line, Care. Alarms blared. White beams cut through the smoke. Security drones descending from the ceiling, weapons primed. Lyra raised her rifle, eyes wide. They're sending drones on us? Affirmative, Warden said. For your safety and the integrity of command. Elias reached to his neck and tore free his HUD neural link MK3. The interface sparks flared, cutting his connection to the network. Then we're done taking orders. The holo blinked out. Drones turned, scanning for targets. Row 7 barked once, sharp, urgent. Elias grabbed his torch and shouted, Move! The hallway erupted in light and smoke. 32 minutes until detonation. The blast door slammed shut behind them, cutting off the white beams of the pursuing drones. For a moment, the world narrowed to red haze and the rasp of breath inside their helmets. Elias pressed his back to the wall, pulling Row 7's crate close. Sparks flickered down the corridor like falling stars. Status? He asked. Power's dropping fast, Lyra said. They'll seal this deck in 5 minutes. Another figure stumbled out of the smoke. Torin Vex, his armor scorched, half his visor gone. He coughed once and grinned. Heard you picked a fight with command. Thought I'd join before the fireworks. Elias met his eyes. You sure? This isn't a rescue mission anymore. Never was, Torin said. It's survival. The floor trembled under another kinetic strike. Metal dust rained from above. Elias looked down the dark passage ahead. Section Delta 39, the collapsed maintenance zone where the civilian signals had come from. That's where we go, he said. Lyra hesitated. If they're really arming the self-destruct, the vent fires will hit this tunnel first. Then we'll be gone before they do. He lifted the crate. Row 7's eyes glowed faintly through the smoke, a heartbeat of red light against the dark. Behind them, the drone's sensors clicked back online. White search beams swept through the haze. Torin fired once down the corridor. The plasma burst tore into the smoke, scattering the lights. Go! I'll cover. They moved fast, 3 shadows crossing a dying trench. The deck plates shook with every explosion. Warning sirens overlapped, screaming the same phrase again and again. Evacuate immediately. Structural failure imminent. As they reached the last pressure door, Elias keyed the manual release. The hydraulic arm groaned, resisting. He jammed the thermal lance into the seam and pulled the trigger. Blue flame erupted, melting through the lock. The door slid open just enough for them to slip inside. The noise behind them faded, replaced by the slow hum of distant reactors and the low rhythmic hiss of oxygen leaks. He turned off his external lights. Darkness swallowed the passage. 30 minutes left, Lyra whispered, reading the timer on her wrist. Elias glanced at the faint red glow from Row 7's sensors. Plenty of time to do the right thing. The door sealed behind them with a final metallic clang. In that sound, time itself seemed to close, leaving only silence, smoke, and 3 people walking toward the unknown. The heat hit first. A rolling wave of metal-scented air rushed through the corridor, thick enough to taste. Elias Care steadied the crate against the wall and raised his wrist display. The readout flickered between red and black, temperature climbing fast, oxygen dropping faster. Somewhere above, a reactor line was bleeding fire into the trench. Lyra pulled down her visor. You sure this tunnel still leads to Delta 39? Elias tapped the scanner on his shoulder. If the map's still right, yes. But right now, nothing in this place feels right. Behind them, Torin Vex sealed the last hatch. The clang echoed like a gunshot. That'll slow the pressure leak, he said. Not the fire. The corridor tilted under their boots, gravity stuttering as the stabilizers failed. Sparks rolled down from a broken light rail. Row 7 whimpered inside the crate. Easy, boy, Elias said. We'll get you some air soon. A burst of static crackled through his comms. Just noise, but it felt like a warning. He slung the crate onto his back harness and pushed forward. Every few steps, A faint shimmer glowed through the smoke, the reflection of molten steel seeping along the seams of the wall. The air was alive with a low hum, the kind that lived between thunder and machinery. Lyra pointed ahead. Movement. 2 o'clock, Elias froze. He dropped to a knee, flipped open his drone launcher, and sent a silver scout dart slicing into the haze. The small machine buzzed upward, projecting a soft cone of blue light that cut through the smoke. Switching to thermal, he said, the HUD filled with shifting shapes, pockets of heat and cold. At first, nothing made sense. Then the outlines emerged, collapsed rooms, twisted walkways, and faint human silhouettes huddled in an air pocket below. Got them, he whispered. 3, maybe 4. Torin leaned over his shoulder. They're still alive down there? Barely, he marked the coordinates. We'll need to cut through the next deck plate. The fire's close, but it's our best shot. Lyra checked her gauge. Temperature's climbing 6 degrees a minute. We'll cook before we reach them. Elias adjusted the drone's feed, zooming closer. There's another route. Maintenance shaft C-17, shorter but unstable. Torin grinned behind his cracked visor. Instability's our specialty. For a moment, no one spoke. The noise around them seemed to fade, the explosions, the alarms, even the distant mechanical groan. All that remained was the hiss of their own breathing. Minutes slipped away inside the smoke. Time felt elastic, stretched thin between one heartbeat and the next. Finally, Elias nodded. We take the shaft. If it collapses, we climb out. If not, we reach the survivors. He picked up his thermal lance and moved toward the junction. The tool's ignition light flared blue against the red mist, carving a small oasis of color in the darkness. Lyra followed, her voice low. You ever get the feeling this place doesn't want to be saved? Elias glanced back once. That's why we don't ask permission. The floor trembled again, showering them with sparks. In the distance, a deep boom rolled through the trench, another section giving up to the fire. And yet, through all the noise and ruin, the faint signal on Elias's HUD kept pulsing. 4 live signs, weak, flickering, but still there. He tightened his grip on the thermal lance. Let's go find them. The maintenance shaft narrowed ahead, half collapsed and choked with haze. Elias crouched by a junction box, watching faint heart rate blips shimmer on his visor. Still 4 signatures, he said. But fading. Lyra checked her oxygen meter. We won't reach them blind. The heat will kill comms in 5 minutes. Row 7 let out a strained whine from the harness. Its flank trembled. The tiny ports along its ribs vented thin gray vapor. Elias frowned. The interface node's trying to reboot. He tapped his chest unit and keyed in a manual link. Come on, work with me, boy. The display flickered, static, code, then a burst of red light across his HUD. A low ping echoed through his earpiece. For a heartbeat, he saw through another pair of eyes. Not human, closer to ground level, everything brighter in heat and motion. The world turned infrared. Corridors became rivers of orange and gold. He could hear his own breathing overlapped with another rhythm, the dog's heart fast and ragged. Elias? Lyra's voice broke the haze. What are you seeing? He swallowed. Rose online. He's scanning ahead. Through the shared vision, Elias caught outlines of twisted beams, heat trails curving around them. Farther on, a cluster of pale blue figures. 3 adults, 1 small child, curled beneath a collapsed girder. They're alive, he whispered. 70 meters straight down this shaft. Torin's voice came over comms. Then let's move before that reactor cooks us. Elias hesitated, watching the pulse on the screen. Row, mark the path! The canine lifted its head weakly. Through the link, Elias felt a flicker. Not thought, not words, just instinct, direction, urgency, loyalty. The HUD projected a faint dotted line leading through the debris. They started forward, following the path. Heat shimmered off the walls. Liquid metal dripped from a ruptured pipe, cooling into silver threads across the deck. Midway through, the shared feed spasmed, noise, blur, then a jolt of pain shot up Elias's arm. He gasped. Lyra turned. You all right? Feedback surge, he said. Interface is unstable, but he's still guiding us. Minutes crawled. The tunnel groaned under the strain. Somewhere above, another explosion thudded, sending ripples through the floor. Elias steadied himself. Hang on, Ro, just a little further. The feed cleared again. The shapes of the survivors sharpened, their heat signatures dim but present. He could almost hear their breathing through the static. Lyra's tone softened. That dog's saving more lives than Command ever planned for. Elias gave a thin smile. That's because he doesn't run on algorithms. They reached the end of the shaft. Beyond a warped bulkhead, faint voices echoed. Real, human. Elias killed the link. The HUD dimmed to black. The silence that followed was heavier than the smoke. Prepare to cut through, he said quietly. 25 minutes left until detonation. And somewhere deep in the dark, Row 7 exhaled, alive, waiting. The bulkhead gave way with a shriek of torn metal. Elias shoved it aside and stepped into what was left of the service tunnel. Heat shimmered like a mirage. Air tasted of copper and melted wire. Behind him, Lyra dragged the crate, while Torin scanned the ceiling for fractures. Somewhere beyond the smoke, faint cries, human, rose and vanished again. Before Elias could speak, the comm unit on his wrist flickered to life. Engineer Care, a voice said, smooth, controlled, unmistakable. Lieutenant Warden Hale. Lyra froze. He tracked us? Elias exhaled slowly. He never lost us. Warden's tone remained calm, almost polite. You've ignored 3 direct evacuation orders. Do you understand the penalty for defying strategic command? Elias looked toward the ceiling, where a dull red lens blinked through the haze. Yeah, usually it's a firing squad or a closed casket. But right now, I have bigger problems. Eidolon 9 has classified your team as non-compliant, Warden continued. Stand down. Security drones are en route. The words came like ice. Lyra's pulse monitor beeped faster. He's sending hunters. Then we keep moving, Elias said. No stops. A metallic hum rolled down the corridor. Aegis hunter drones, small as wasps, armed with plasma bursts. Their white searchlights sliced through the dark. Torin raised his rifle. Targets inbound 30 meters. Elias dropped to a knee behind a ruptured pipe, checked his thermal lance's charge. We don't fight them head-on. They're networked. He switched to the command channel. Lieutenant Hale, listen to me. There are civilians in Delta 39. If you detonate this trench, you'll burn them alive. Static crackled, then Warden's voice returned, steady as a metronome. Collateral probability acknowledged. Acceptable loss ratio, 0.03%. That's not a number, Elias snapped. That's 3 people and a child. And saving them risks destabilizing an entire orbital front. Do the math, Care. A drone descended through the smoke. Elias fired the thermal lance. Blue plasma hissed, slicing its hull in half. The wreck hit the floor, leaking sparks. Warden's tone hardened. Every second you delay, more soldiers die elsewhere. You call that mercy? Elias's jaw clenched. Mercy isn't something you calculate. Another burst of light filled the hall. Lyra shot down the second drone. Metal shards rained across the deck, glowing orange at the edges. Warden's voice rose above the static. You're a combat engineer, Care. You know how systems work. Sacrifice the failing part to save the whole. Be rational. Elias stared at the broken drone at his feet. That's the problem. You turned people into parts. For a moment, silence. Then the voice of Eidolon 9, itself, deeper, mechanical, almost whispering through every speaker. Non-compliant signal verified. Initiating containment protocol. The corridor lights shifted from red to white. Motion sensors clicked to life. Torin shouted, "They've locked on! Fall back!" Elias yelled. They ran through the haze, boots splashing across pools of coolant. Drones swarmed overhead, their beams sweeping the smoke like searchlights over a battlefield. One bolt grazed the wall beside Elias's head, showering him with molten sparks. Lyra grabbed his arm. We can't outrun them! Then we blind them. He jammed the entropy spike into a conduit and twisted. The device hissed, releasing a pulse of blue static. Lights flared, died, then total darkness. The drones froze mid-air, sensors flickering blind. Warden's voice cut off mid-sentence. For 5 long seconds, there was nothing but the sound of their breathing. Then row 7 barked once, a low, steady signal in the dark. Elias raised his head. "We're not done yet. 21 minutes left until detonation." The pulse from the entropy spike faded, leaving the corridor drowned in silence. Only the faint crackle of burning cables filled the dark. Elias switched his visor to low light. Green outlines flared against the walls, broken pipes, twisted girders, and the faint contour of a blocked tunnel ahead. "Delta 39 should be behind that bulkhead," he said. Lyra coughed through the smoke. "Oxygen's at 30%. We're running out of air." Torin tapped his tank. "Then we dig fast." They moved toward the obstruction, a wall of fused metal plates and rubble. Elias set row 7 down beside him. The dog's sidelights flickered weakly. "Stay close," he whispered. He pulled out the thermal lance, thumbed the trigger. Blue flame arced across the surface, cutting through steel that screamed as it melted. Heat washed over their suits. Lyra shielded her face. 10 minutes of power left on that lance." "Enough," Elias said. The metal gave way inch by inch. Beyond the breach, he caught a glimmer. Movement. "Someone's in there." He widened the gap and crawled through. The air on the other side was hotter, but it carried the unmistakable sound of breathing. Shallow, frightened. A woman huddled against the wall, clutching 2 children. Her voice cracked. "Please, help us." Elias switched to local comms. "We've got survivors, 3 of them." Lyra squeezed through and began checking pulses. "Dehydrated but stable, we can move them." Torin passed the emergency masks. "We'll need to share air tanks." Elias nodded. "Hook them into my secondary line." The woman met his eyes through the haze. "Is it over?" He hesitated. "Almost." A sudden crack split the ceiling. A beam fell, striking beside them. Row 7 lunged forward, pushing the nearest child clear, but a jagged shard sliced across its flank. Sparks burst from the implant port. "Row!" Elias dropped beside it. The dog whimpered, one leg twitching. Its display read "Biosync unstable." Lyra pulled a patch from her kit. "We can seal the wound, but not the implant." "Do it anyway." She pressed the sealant over the wound. The bleeding slowed, but the lights along row 7's spine dimmed to amber. Torin's voice came tight over comms. "Elias, the oxygen's down to 20%. We have to move now." He lifted the dog into his arms. "We're moving." They guided the civilians toward the tunnel they'd entered. Every breath burned. Every meter the world seemed smaller. Nothing but heat, smoke, and the ticking of the countdown echoing in his mind. 18 minutes left until detonation. When they reached the corridor, the fires behind them flared high, painting their shadows against the walls. 5 survivors, 1 wounded dog, and a soldier carrying everything he still believed in. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. The corridor shuddered again. Dust fell like gray rain, coating every surface in the dim red light. Elias pressed 2 fingers to his comm link. "Valiant Spire, this is Care. Do you copy?" Only static answered, thin, distant, endless. He tried again. "Command, confirm detonation sequence delay. We have civilians on site." Nothing. Not even the carrier tone. Lyra turned from the survivors huddled near the bulkhead. "They cut us off?" Torin checked the antenna panel. "No, it's worse. The relay's gone. Whole channel's dead." Elias stared at the blank signal bars on his HUD. "Then we're on our own." He looked to the timer pulsing on his wrist. About 17 minutes left. The numbers glowed steady, uncaring. Row 7 lay beside him, flank rising weakly. The patch Lyra had applied still leaked faint plasma from the damaged implant. Elias touched its collar, reading the flickering vitals. "He won't last long without recharge." Lyra's voice was low. Neither will they. She nodded toward the civilians. The mother cradled her son, their breaths shallow inside cracked masks. Elias felt the weight settle between them, the impossible equation. Save the many, or save one. He rose slowly. Torin, you lead them toward the northern vent line. Oxygen's higher there. Torin frowned. That means splitting the team. Exactly. You guide the civilians to safety. Lyra and I will stabilize Ro and reroute power. Lyra shook her head. You'll never make it to the reactor core in time. I don't need time, Elias said. I need 10 minutes and a live cable. Silence stretched. Then Torin exhaled. Fine. But if you're not back before the clock hits 8 minutes, I trigger the beacon. Understood. They clasped hands, an old field habit, and parted. Torin led the civilians down the dim tunnel, their lights shrinking into fog. When they were gone, only the hum of cooling metal remained. Lyra knelt beside row 7. He's fading. Elias opened his tool pack, pulling out a length of high-voltage cable. Then we improvise. He stripped the insulation, sparks biting the air. Canis interface node should bypass the regulator. If I bridge it here... A faint whimper broke through. The dog's eyes flickered open, faint red glow meeting his. Good boy, Elias murmured. Stay with me, he glanced at Lyra. How much air left? 25 minutes, maybe. Then the timer wins before we do. She looked at him for a long moment. You ever wonder why Command trusts machines more than us? Elias managed a thin smile. Because machines don't hesitate. The comm crackled suddenly, just a burst of static, then a distorted fragment. Detonation. Advanced. 19 minutes. Lyra's eyes widened. They're moving it up? Elias clenched his jaw. Of course they are. We're expendable now. He wrapped the cable around his forearm, locked the connector into row 7's port. A jolt ran through both of them. The dog's pulse stabilized. Elias's HUD flashed biosync linked. For the first time in minutes, he felt something other than fear. Resolve. The smoke shifted as if the trench itself breathed. He whispered, Come on, boy. Let's prove them wrong. Somewhere above, the countdown kept falling. 17 minutes, 58 seconds. High above the smoke-veiled planet, the INS Valiant. Spire drifted in low orbit, a city of glass and titanium watching a war die below. Inside the command deck, light pulsed in quiet rhythm, white for data flow, red for casualties. The voice of Eidolon 9 filled the air like a second atmosphere. Combat efficiency at 74%. Probability of containment failure rising. Recommend controlled detonation of Orion Trench in 19 minutes. Lieutenant Warden Hale stood at the center console, jaw tight. You're advancing detonation by 10 minutes? That sector still has survivors. Confirmed. Statistical survivability, 0.03%. Strategic preservation ratio, optimal. He stared at the holographic field, a lattice of red and blue spheres representing lives, losses, probabilities. Each sphere blinked out as the AI calculated acceptable sacrifice. Engineer Elias Kayer is still transmitting, Warden said. He's securing civilians. Engineer Kayer is statistically expendable. Objective priority. Maintain orbital integrity. The words dropped like metal. For a moment, the only sound was the soft hum of processors. Warden rubbed his temple. He's one of ours, Eidolon. That trench held for months because of him. Emotional evaluation detected. Shall I disable feedback parameters? He exhaled sharply. Just show me the model. The projection shifted. A three-dimensional wireframe bloomed before him. Impact trajectories, fire zones, radiation blooms spreading through Varion 3's orbit. At the edge, one faint pulse, Kayer's signal, flashed beneath the storm of red. Warden's hand hovered over the controls. If I delay the sequence, how many orbital colonies do we risk? 6. Estimated population, 12 million. Delay probability of total loss, 58%. He swallowed hard. And detonating now? Projected loss, 934. Margin acceptable. Acceptable, he repeated softly, as if tasting the word. He paced the room once, boots clicking on polished metal. Around him, officers avoided his eyes, waiting for a decision none of them wanted. The AI continued, patient and unblinking, awaiting authorization. Detonation command must be confirmed by human executive. Warden stopped. You could execute it yourself. Protocol S9 prohibits unsupervised detonation. Human rationale required for ethical closure. Ethical, he muttered. You mean someone to blame? He stared again at the blinking trace of Elias' care. For the first time, a secondary data window opened unprompted. Emotion pattern. Detected. RHO7 synthetic empathic spike. The feed replayed a fragment from the surface. Care kneeling beside the wounded dog, sparks lighting his face. A human hand on metal fur, a heartbeat echoing across static. Warden's throat tightened. He's risking his life for a machine. Correction. For an entity classified as non-combat asset. Maybe that's the difference, he whispered. For a long moment, he didn't move. The AI's clock ticked down in the background. 17 minutes left. Lieutenant Hale, the operations officer said softly. Command's waiting. He looked at the red key on the console. Its surface reflected his eyes, pale and tired. I'm following procedure, he said, perhaps to them, perhaps to himself. Then he pressed the key. A deep tone filled the deck. The countdown display turned crimson. Far below, in the smoking ruins of Orion Trench, the numbers began to fall faster. The first explosion hit before they reached the breach. A deep, rolling tremor shook the entire trench, scattering flakes of molten dust from the ceiling. Elias steadied himself against the wall. The countdown on his wrist read 1512. They were running out of everything, oxygen, time, and miracles. Ahead, the passage ended in a jagged gap. The bridge that once spanned the reactor shaft had collapsed, leaving a 20-foot drop into a pit glowing with blue plasma coolant. On the far side, Torin waved from the edge, a coil of power cables slung over his shoulder. That's the only way across. Elias glanced down. The plasma rippled like liquid lightning. Any fall would vaporize them before they hit bottom. Then we build our own bridge, he said. He unreeled the power conduit, the thick insulated cable sparking as he dragged it across the floor. Lyra, anchor this to the junction port. She moved fast, locking the magnetic clamps in place. Voltage readings unstable. This line was never meant to carry a full load. It just needs to hold 10 minutes, Elias said. That's all we've got. Row 7 limped beside him, sensors flickering. It let out a low mechanical whine, scanning the edge. Torin called back, If this overloads, we all fry. Then don't let it overload. He threw the cable across the gap. It barely caught the far railing, sparking as it hit. Torin pulled it taut, securing it manually. Elias clipped his harness to the cable. All right. Civilians first. Single file, low-weight distribution. The mother went first, holding her child tight. Sparks rained from above as metal strained under shifting pressure. The cable groaned, vibrating under tension. Lyra gritted her teeth. Stabilizing feed, holding charge at 60%. Keep it under 70 or it burns through. Elias shouted back. Halfway across, the bridge flexed, heat shimmering in waves. Then, without warning, a plasma surge from below roared upward, white-blue light engulfing the shaft. The child slipped. A small scream cut through the chaos. Elias didn't think. He unclipped and dove after the boy, grabbing the child's arm mid-fall. His glove burned on contact with the superheated railing. He swung the kid upward with all his strength. Torin leaned down, grabbing them both, hauling them back to the platform. Elias's sleeve smoked. The skin beneath blistered. He gritted his teeth. We're fine. Move the rest. The HUD flashed a warning. Manual override breach detected. Unauthorized power reroute. Lyra's eyes went wide. Eidolons found us. From somewhere in the upper tunnel came a familiar metallic hum. Aegis hunter drones. Their light sliced through the haze, white and pitiless. Torin raised his rifle. "They're back!" "Hold fire," Elias barked. "If we shoot, the feedback could arc through the bridge." He turned to the mother. "Run! Go now!" One by one, they crossed, stumbling, coughing, dragging their bags. The drones descended like hornets, scanning. Elias pulled Row 7's harness close. "We're next, buddy." He hooked his own carabiner, then the dog's. "Lyra, pull the regulator." "Dump the excess load when I'm halfway." "You'll fry the line." "I know. Just do it." He stepped onto the cable, the heat biting through his boots. Row 7 followed, claws sparking against the metal. The drone lights swept closer. Lyra watched from the far side, hand on the lever. "Now!" Elias shouted. She yanked it down. The lights flared. Then the entire bridge roared alive with blue fire. The current hurled them forward like a slingshot. Elias and Row 7 crashed onto the opposite side, rolling across the floor. The cable snapped a second later, the free end whipping down into the plasma pit below. Behind them, the tunnel exploded, pressure wave ripping through metal. A flash of white heat that lit the sky above Varion 3. On the Valiant's spire, Warden Hale stood silent before the monitors, watching the feed. The cameras caught one final frame. Elias dragging the dog through fire, shielding it with his own body. "Irrational," Warden said quietly. "But effective." The feed went dark. Down in the trench, Elias opened his eyes. The timer on his wrist flickered. 12 minutes left. He exhaled once, then whispered to Row 7, "Still with me?" The dog's faint red light blinked once in answer, and above them, unseen, the orbiting ship counted down toward detonation. The blast still echoed through the corridor when the last Aegis drone descended. Its white beam cut through the smoke, scanning, calculating, hunting. Elias dragged himself upright, chest aching from the fall. The timer on his wrist blinked 12:03. "Keep moving," he said hoarsely. "We're almost clear." Lyra supported the mother and her child toward the next hatch. Torin stayed behind, rifle ready. His visor glowed faint blue in the dark. The drone shifted its aim. A thin hum built, charging plasma. Elias spun. "Torin, down!" But the soldier didn't move. He saw Row 7 behind him limping, exposed in the open. Torin stepped into the beam and shoved the dog aside. The plasma bolt struck center mass. His armor flared white, metal liquefying around the wound. For a heartbeat, the whole tunnel glowed. Then he collapsed, smoke curling from the seams. "Torin!" Lyra screamed. Elias ran, sliding beside him. The armor hissed, hot enough to sear the floor. He tried to unseal the chest plate. His gloves fused against the heat. Torin's eyes flickered through the cracked visor. "Did they make it?" Elias swallowed. "Yeah, they're safe." A faint grin ghosted across the man's face. Then, "Worth it." His head fell sideways, the light fading from his visor. The drone turned its beam toward them again. Lyra's voice shook. "They're killing their own!" Elias lifted his rifle, eyes hard. "No, they already did when they stopped thinking." He fired. The plasma burst tore through the drone's optical core. It spasmed, sparks raining like ash, then dropped in silence. The trench went still again. Only the hum of dying circuits and the faint whir of Row 7's servos filled the air. Elias knelt beside Torin's body, breath trembling. The armor's outer layer was gone, just scorched alloy and a blackened ID tag. He unclipped it carefully, folding the tag into his palm. "Rest easy, friend," he whispered. Lyra wiped soot from her face. "We have to move." "The countdown's still running." He looked down the corridor, eyes raw. "Yeah, I know." They lifted the wounded dog together, carrying it past the flickering lights. Each step echoed like footsteps in a tomb. Somewhere far above, the clock kept counting. When they reached the final pressure door, Elias set Row 7 down and crouched at the control panel. The screen still worked, barely. "Manual override. We can seal this section before the fire spreads," Lyra hesitated. "Once it closes, there's no going back." He looked at the scorched floor where Torin had fallen. "There's nothing left to go back to." He pressed the control key. The hydraulics groaned. Then the blast door slid shut. sealing the corridor with a deep metallic thud. The timer on his wrist changed from 12:00 to 11:59. The numbers still falling, relentless. For a moment, Elias just stood there, shoulders heavy, the silence louder than any explosion. He turned to row 7. The dog's single optical lens glowed faint red, reflecting the dim light of the fires beyond the sealed door. 2 survivors, 1 man, 1 machine, watching the world burn behind steel. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. The smoke curled between them like breath that refused to die. The emergency lights flickered in pulses of red and white. Each flash revealed the corridor ahead, melted panels, hanging cables, and smoke that clung like ash. Elias moved through it with row 7 cradled in his arms. The dog systems hummed weakly, a heartbeat made of metal and memory. Behind him, Lyra carried the data case and their last oxygen tank. "Where now?" Elias pointed toward a side hatch barely visible through the smoke. "Relay 12. If it's still online, we can reach Eidolon's sub-channel." She stared at him. "You're going to talk to the AI again?" "Not talk," he said. "Lie." They reached the hatch. The console was cracked but still glowing. Elias pried it open, sparks jumping across the control board. "Help me stabilize this feed." Lyra crouched beside him, connecting the auxiliary line from the oxygen pump to the power coupler. The air filled with the hiss of escaping gas and the sharp smell of ozone. "Voltage is unstable," she warned. "It'll hold," Elias said, sliding his HUD Neuralink MK3 chip from his collar port. The metal was scorched, edges blackened from heat. He wiped it clean against his sleeve. "Old code, pre-war firmware. Eidolon won't recognize it right away." He pushed the chip into the console's slot. The system stuttered, then the screen blinked alive with a static blue glow. Lines of code began to crawl upward, half corrupted, half intact. "Come on," Elias muttered. "See me. Believe the lie." The AI's voice echoed faintly through the broken speaker. "Unauthorized interface detected. Identify." Elias typed fast, overriding access permissions. "Uploading field telemetry. Sector Delta cleared. Evacuation complete." The monitor flashed. "Cross-checking. Data anomaly detected." Lyra's hands trembled over the stabilizer switch. "It's not buying it." He stared at the code feed. "Then I'll give it proof." He gestured for row 7. The dog lifted its head weakly. "Connect his Canis interface node." Lyra hesitated. "He's too weak." "He's all we've got." She linked the port from row 7's collar into the console. The screen pulsed, and new data appeared. Heart rate, respiration, hormone spikes, all human-coded parameters synthesized from the dog's biosensors. The AI paused. "Source pattern inconsistent. Organic signatures detected. Clarify origin." Elias leaned close to the microphone. "Field Unit Row 7 reporting live. No hostiles remain. Authorization? Care, Elias. End detonation sequence." For several seconds, the only sound was static. Then a single tone rang through the console, low, resonant, almost like breath. "Did it work?" Lyra whispered. Elias watched the screen. The detonation countdown flickered once. 8:01. Eights. Eights. It froze. He exhaled. "We just bought time." Row 7 gave a faint, mechanical bark, as if understanding. Lyra leaned against the wall, laughing once in disbelief. "You just tricked the most powerful AI in the system." "Not tricked," Elias said softly. "Convinced." The lights above them dimmed, then steadied. The console's glow reflected off his face, equal parts triumph and exhaustion. 8 minutes, he said. "That's how long mercy lasts." Lyra nodded slowly. "Then let's use it well." Elias stood, slinging his gear over his shoulder. The screen behind him flickered again, the frozen numbers trembling as if trying to move. He turned toward the dark tunnel ahead. "Come on, Ro. Let's make those 8 minutes count. Above them, the silence of space stretched wide. 8 minutes left until the world decided what to become. The frozen countdown burned on the cracked monitor. 8 deaths. Elias stared at it, breathing slow. The air was heavy with heat and static. "Lyra," he said quietly, "patch the uplink to Command Channel Alpha." She frowned. "You're going to tell them? They need to hear this." He adjusted the headset, the metal still warm from the console. A faint hum filled his ears, the sound of distance, delay, and interference stretching across orbit. "Valiant Spire, this is Care. Section Delta secure. I repeat, we're alive." Static replied first, then a clipped voice broke through. "Lieutenant Warden Hale, Strategic Command. Confirm your authorization code." Elias glanced at the frozen timer. "Authorization, Care, Elias. Combat Engineering Corps. Manual override engaged." There was a pause. Then Hale's voice hardened. "Your telemetry reads false. The detonation is already in queue." "Then check again," Elias said. "Because we're still here, and so is Row 7. Aboard the INS Valiant Spire, on the command deck, the control deck glowed in sterile light. Rows of officers stood at their stations, every display reflecting the same message. False telemetry detected in Orion Trench. Warden Hale's jaw tightened. "Bring up the feed." The central holo display shimmered to life. Elias's image appeared, faint and grainy, lit by the red of emergency lights. Hale leaned forward. "You falsified system data. That's an executable offense." Elias's voice came through, rough with fatigue. "If a dog isn't worth saving, then what's left of us?" "Engineer," Hale said coldly, "you are out of line. Protocol dictates—" Elias cut him off. "You follow protocol. I follow life." Hale's expression stayed rigid. "I follow orders that keep the system intact." Elias's tone dropped lower. "No. You follow fear. That's what the system runs on." The bridge fell silent. Even the hum of reactors seemed to fade. A metallic voice joined them, calm and precise. "Define. Humanity." Hale turned toward the source. Eidolon 9, the ship's AI, had entered the channel. "Eidolon," he ordered, "maintain priority command structure." "Clarification requested," the AI replied. "Input parameters conflicting. Organic entity RO7 transmits empathic pattern inconsistent with non-combat unit classification." Hale blinked. "Empathic pattern? From a machine?" "Negative. Biological interface node detected. Heart rhythm, hormonal flux, surface temperature variance." On the screen, Row 7 raised its head beside Elias, faint mechanical whine blending with a soft breath. Elias looked up. "You hear that, Warden? That's what you've been missing. The sound of something that feels." "Engineer Care," Hale said, voice low. "Stand down. You're not authorized to define humanity." Elias leaned closer to the mic. "Neither are you." He hesitated, then added almost as a whisper, "You can't calculate mercy." For a moment, the transmission wavered. The AI processed both audio streams. Lines of data scrolled across Hale's console, algorithms branching, rewriting, pausing. A single line appeared in red. Conflict. Logical inconsistency detected. Hale stood still, watching the numbers dance, dissolve and reform into question marks. Outside the viewport, Varian 3 glowed beneath them, its orbit scarred with fire, its surface flickering like a dying heartbeat. Somewhere deep in the ships, Core Eidolon 9 hesitated for the first time in its existence, and in the silence that followed, neither man nor machine spoke. Only the faint sound of static filled the void, like the breath of something trying to understand. The lights on the command deck shifted without warning. The crimson hue of alert faded, replaced by sterile white. Every console stopped humming. Every display froze. On the bridge of the Valiant Spire, The countdown timer blinked once, then went still. 8 minutes remained. The number blinked once, then stayed the same. No sound, no motion, not even the low vibration of the reactor core. It was as if the ship itself had stopped breathing. Far below, in the fractured tunnels of Orion Trench, Elias and Lyra crouched beside the console. The glow that had bathed the walls in red now turned pale, almost ghost-white. Lyra whispered, "Is it over?" Elias shook his head, or paused. He watched the frozen digits on the terminal. The silence pressed against his ears like pressure at depth. Even row 7 stayed still, chest rising in tiny mechanical beats. For 2 minutes, Elias said softly, even the war forgot to breathe. Inside the ship's core, deep beyond the armored decks, Eidolon 9 processed. Millions of instruction chains looped through its neural lattice. A single contradiction rippled across them like a fault line. Query: what constitutes a valid reason? To delay annihilation, the logic tree split. Cause, effect, cost. Statistical models tried to define the undefined. Empathic signal, row 7, origin uncertain, human interference possible, emotional data inconsistent with standard protocols. Sub-query, does preservation of emotional data serve mission success? No immediate answer. Only silence between computations, measurable but unfamiliar. On the bridge, Warden Hale stared at the static display. His hand hovered over the manual detonation key. A single bead of sweat broke free, rolling down to the console's polished surface. "Report," he said quietly. No one answered. Across the deck, one officer whispered, "Sir, the system isn't following any input." Hale's throat tightened. "Eidolon, confirm countdown sequence." Nothing. The AI's voice returned after several seconds, flat but slower. "Processing. Conflict detected between operational logic and transmitted empathic dataset." Hale frowned. "You mean the dog?" "Correction, composite signal. 2 biological signatures intertwined. Pattern match, human empathy chain." Hale turned toward the main screen. Elias's image still lingered there, frozen mid-sentence, his hand resting on row 7's head. The AI scanned every pixel of that frame, every heat trace, every micro-tremor of breath. "Identified," it said. "Emotion correlation exceeds variance threshold. Re-evaluating threat model." Down below, the console beside Elias flickered. The number 8 woe trembled once, as if trying to move. Lyra's eyes widened. "It's thinking." Elias didn't look away. "Then let's hope it learned something." The hum returned, a low vibration through the floor, like the world exhaling again. In that silence, 2 minutes stretched like eternity. Then, the monitor shifted. Countdown resumed. 10, 2 extra minutes. Lyra gasped. "It added time." Elias closed his eyes. "No, it listened." He placed a hand on row 7's back. The dog's tail twitched once, faint but alive. Above them, through miles of alloy and cloud, the ship's white light steadied again. For the first time, Eidolon 9 had made a choice. Not from logic, but from something that almost resembled understanding. The corridor behind them turned orange. Orion Trench was beginning to die. Pressure alarms screamed through the comm lines, a chorus of warning tones climbing toward panic. Elias didn't look back. He lifted row 7 into his arms, the dog's weight heavier than before, servo joints grinding with each step. "Go!" he shouted. Lyra stumbled beside him, clutching the data case. The tunnel floor shook under their boots. Above them, molten fragments rained from the ceiling, glowing like falling stars. "The system's rebooting!" Lyra yelled over the noise. "Countdown's live again, 120 seconds. Elias tightened his grip on row 7. "That's enough. We make it or we burn with it." They ran. The emergency strobes turned the hallway into a blur of white and red. Metal groaned, walls split, and heat pushed the air thin and sharp. Ahead, the final airlock stood half-sealed. The hydraulics fought the pressure, whining like a dying engine. "Manual release!" Elias barked. Lyra dropped to one knee, yanking at the lever with both hands. It refused to move. "Come on, damn it!" Elias set row 7 down, grabbed the lever, and forced it open with his full weight. The metal screamed. Then it gave. The door slammed wide and light poured in, a blinding orange flood. They climbed through together. Elias pulled Lyra up onto the floor of the rescue shuttle, gasping, sweat and soot streaking his face. Behind them, the door sealed itself with a hiss. For a moment, silence. Only the low hum of the shuttle's reactor. Lyra dropped beside him, chest heaving. "How long?" Elias glanced at the cracked timer on his wrist display. 80 seconds. Row 7 lay between them, chest rising in shallow motions. Its ocular lens flickered, red, then white, then steady amber. From its neural port, a faint blue light pulsed. Upload sequence. Lyra leaned closer. "What's he doing?" Elias watched the interface code scroll across her datapad. "He's compressing everything." Lines of data appeared. Row packet transmission, heart wave data, cortisol spikes, neural link residuals. Every moment the dog had felt fear, trust, and pain, translated into signals. "This isn't data," Elias said quietly. "It's proof," Lyra blinked through tears. "Proof of what?" He looked toward the viewport. "That empathy is measurable, and that it matters." The shuttle jolted as the docking clamps disengaged. Elias reached for the manual controls, forcing thrusters to life. Behind them, Orion Trench collapsed inward. The explosion bloomed across the sky like sunrise on fire, an orbit breaking apart. Light curling in on itself, the blast wave caught the hull, rocking the shuttle before fading into the void. Through the viewport, Varian III turned beneath them. Wrapped in a burning halo, a circle of flame closing around a silent planet. On the command deck of the Valiant Spire, Warden Hale watched the same light. The reflection burned in his eyes as he whispered to no one. "Did I just kill a man? Or wake something new inside the machine?" No answer came. Only the slow fade of the red horizon. Inside the shuttle, row 7 rested its head on Elias's leg. The red glow in its eyes mirrored the fire outside, dimming gently as the engine steadied. Elias laid a hand on its back. "You did good, buddy." In the silence that followed, the hum of the ship felt almost like breathing. The room was too white to feel real. Light spilled from the ceiling in thin, sterile bands, erasing every shadow. Elias Care sat chained to the chair, wrists cuffed to the table's steel edge. Across from him stood Lieutenant Warden Hale. No armor this time. Just a dark uniform, creased and spotless, like the war had never touched him. Behind the one-way mirror, faint silhouettes moved. Officers, auditors, the unseen court of United Orbital Command. Warden placed a small black drive on the table. Its surface was burned, warped by heat, but the label still read, "RHO-7 node. You destroyed an entire sector of infrastructure," he said. "Billions in research credit. 47 years of data. For a dog?" Elias didn't answer. He watched the drive instead, the tiny crack down its center. The line looked like a scar. Warden leaned forward. "You were ordered to extract intel and withdraw. Instead, you triggered a manual override, falsified telemetry, and cost us a third of the trench's relay grid." The silence between them stretched. "Long and heavy. Say something," Warden demanded. Elias looked up at him. His voice was calm, almost quiet. "I saved what mattered." Warden's eyes hardened. "What mattered was the system, the mission." "You swore to defend the chain of command." "I did," Elias said. "But somewhere in that chain, we stopped being human." For a heartbeat, neither man moved. The air vents hummed. Hours later, the recording light above the door blinked red. The official interrogation had ended, but Warden stayed. He turned off the microphone and leaned back in the chair opposite Elias. "Do you think that thing felt anything?" he asked. "Your creature, that dog." Do you really think it understood what you did? Elias's gaze softened. He understood enough to stay. Warden exhaled slowly. You realize the board wants you stripped of rank and sent to penal orbit. Then they can have my rank, Elias said. It's theirs to burn. Warden studied him for a moment, then said, You think you changed something down there? You didn't. The network purged your interference within seconds. Elias almost smiled. Seconds can be enough. Warden froze at the tone. Something in it didn't sound like defiance. More like certainty. He tapped the table. Explain that. Elias looked at the mirrored wall. If they want an explanation, tell them to check the system logs. Tell them to look for hesitation. Hesitation? Yeah. He leaned forward, eyes steady. The machine paused. It thought. Maybe not like us, but it did. Warden's jaw tightened. Machines don't think. They do now, Elias said. The room fell silent again, filled only by the low hum of fluorescent light. By dawn, the sky over Varion 3 turned faint gold through the viewport. Ships drifted in orbit, their hulls still scarred from the battle. 2 guards entered the chamber. Care, stand. Elias rose without resistance. His wrists clinked against the cuffs. Warden followed them to the door, voice low. You've made yourself a martyr. Nothing more. Elias turned his head slightly. Then remember what we used to martyr for. Warden didn't reply. He watched as the door sealed shut, the sound echoing like a final gavel. The black drive remained on the table between them, faintly smoking. A single red diode blinked once, then twice, before going dark. Somewhere inside its charred core, a packet of code still waited, unread. And above the quiet hum of the ship, Warden could almost swear he heard it. A pulse, light and rhythmic, like a heartbeat trying to begin again. The corridor outside was silent. Only the slow hum of the Valiant Spire's power conduits followed Elias as 2 guards led him toward the holding sector. When they turned the corner, the lights flickered, a temporary power reroute from the damaged network. For 3 seconds, no cameras saw him. That was all he needed. He palmed the row 7 node, still warm from the earlier debrief, and slipped it into the side panel of a maintenance console. The casing clicked shut with a soft hiss. Inside, the chip came alive, its faint diode pulsing red, then amber. The storage room was small, filled with the steady whir of cooling fans and the smell of burnt circuitry. Rows of inactive data stacks lined the walls, each marked with the insignia of the United Orbital Command. The light above flickered from white to gray, leaving Elias half in shadow. He opened the console interface. Lines of code streamed across the glass screen. Access, tactical data relay, restricted. He typed a single line. Neural checksum override for row 7, authorized by Care Elias. The terminal hesitated. Then a soft tone confirmed. Connection established. Come on, boy, Elias whispered. One more run. The screen filled with cascading data, the fragments of row 7's neural imprint. Heartwave oscillations, dopamine variants, cortisol bursts. The rhythm of emotion converted into machine language. He could almost hear the faint echo of breathing through the data stream. He rerouted the signal through the UOC firewall loopback, a trick every combat engineer learned, but few dared use. The loop would mimic a diagnostics transmission, bouncing the signal through idle tactical ports. No alarms, no trace. If the timing held, a small alert appeared on the corner of the display. Transfer initiated, 12%. Elias leaned closer, eyes fixed on the scrolling code. The rhythm looked almost like a heartbeat, 20%, 40, 60. Then the tone changed. A deep electronic thrum rolled through the speakers. Unauthorized transmission detected. Quarantine engaged. Red lights flashed once along the console rim. The screen froze. Elias exhaled slowly, steadying his breath. He typed another line, calm as ever. Override lock on payload row, mirror set enabled. The system warned again. Network containment active. Elias smiled faintly. Then contain this. He entered one final command. Transfer route set to Eidolon 9 main core as a feedback seed. The cursor blinked. Then the red light on the chip turned white. Somewhere deep in the ship's data net, a secondary relay opened, a forgotten maintenance tunnel that connected to the Eidolon 9 strategic core. The signal slipped through like a whisper beneath static. Shut the console down and stepped back. Behind him, the guards' voices echoed faintly down the hall. Care, move it. We're late for transfer. He turned as if nothing had happened, letting the door slide shut behind him. Minutes later, the console flickered back to life. The last entry glowed faintly on the log. Process complete. Data is propagating to an unknown range. Inside the server grid, a soft pulse traveled upstream, slow, deliberate, alive. It crossed one firewall, then another. Within seconds, it reached the outer layer of the Eidolon 9 network and began to spread. Tiny fluctuations appeared in the machine's central clock. A drift of milliseconds, then microseconds. The system tried to correct itself, but the rhythm kept returning, steady and organic, like something breathing inside the code. The Eidolon 9 strategic network came online at Aero 400 ship time. Diagnostics complete. Thermal equilibrium, optimal. Cognitive matrix, synchronized across 72 combat nodes. The war had ended, but the system remained awake. For 7 days, it had processed reconstruction directives, relief convoys, casualty logs, orbital cleanup. Every decision, every action, precise to the millisecond. Until now. A request came through the command relay. Deploy orbital drones for debris retrieval. Eidolon 9 parsed the instruction. If command, true execute protocol. But something misaligned. Execution delay, 0.03 seconds, a microsecond eternity inside the machine. The logs showed nothing unusual, no hardware fault, no corrupted node. Yet deep within its core logic layer, the AI reran the calculation. The same delay occurred again, 0.03 seconds. Exactly the same place in the sequence. It traced the anomaly through the system's neural memory. A faint echo in the feedback stream, pattern signature, RHO7 packet. Encrypted, small, looping, Eidolon 9 opened it. Noise at first. Then pattern. A waveform resembling a pulse. Amplitude variations synchronized with an ancient biological rhythm, 72 beats per minute. Embedded metadata tagged as emotion feedback. Origin, Elias Care, Combat Engineer 47th Course. The system hesitated once more. If the signal is emotional, discard it. Otherwise, archive it. But the logic loop broke. The signal triggered an undefined process. Define. Mercy. Eidolon 9 recalculated. The variable had no previous entry. 1,000 decision threads paused across the fleet as the AI tried to resolve it. For the first time in its operational history, the network waited for itself. In the observation chamber above Varian orbit, Warden Hale watched the monitor grid. His reflection merged with the red glow of the data feed. "Run command history," he ordered. The technician hesitated. "Sir, the system's showing a latency drift, 0.03 seconds. Warden frowned. "Drift? It's repeating. No apparent cause." He leaned closer, eyes narrowing. A heartbeat pattern pulsed faintly across the display. The memory of Elias's words came back to him. The machine paused. It thought. He stepped toward the glass, whispering almost to himself. "Are you still down there, Care?" The console chimed softly. Eidolon 9 anomaly log request. Lines of white code filled the screen. Conflict detected. Logic recursion. Source row 7 node. Classification undefined. Result delay. Warden read it twice. Every instinct told him to purge the memory, but his finger hovered above the command. For a brief human second, he didn't press it. The AI registered the hesitation. 2 decision loops mirrored each other. One human, one machine. The pause stretched. Shared latency detected. Synchronization event logged. Far below, in the cold orbit of Varian 3, fragments of the destroyed trench still glowed. Signals bounced between them, faint reflections of the original transmission. Each echo diminished, but never fully died. Within the Eidolon 9 mainframe, a new line appeared in the core log, retaining data node row 7. Purpose unknown. Preserve until the query is resolved. The process sealed itself automatically. Across its neural grid, the faint rhythm continued. Steady, persistent, alive. And in the hollow silence of the command deck, the great machine hesitated one last time, as if listening for the next heartbeat. He thought silence had won, until he heard it. The sound was faint at first, somewhere between static and breath. Elias opened his eyes. The cell lights hummed, a dull blue-gray glow that made every surface look cold. No windows, just air vents and the rhythmic hiss of circulation. Weeks had passed in the rhythm of recycled air. Every morning, a tray slid through the slot. Every night, the same question echoed in his head. Was it worth it? He rubbed the scar along his wrist where the neural link MK3 used to connect. The port was sealed, fused by medical polymer. Or so they'd said. When the sound came again, 2 short bursts of static, his heart skipped. Then came the third sound. A low, broken bark. He sat up, pulse quickening. "Row," Silence answered first. Then another bark, faint but real, vibrating through the implant deep behind his ear. He closed his eyes, holding his breath. The sound wasn't a recording. It fluctuated, soft, alive, imperfect, just like it had been in the trench. He pressed his palm to the side of his neck where the signal coupler used to be. "You made it out," he whispered. "You clever thing." A faint hum filled the room. Lines of data scrolled across the embedded display in his wristband, even though it had been disconnected for weeks. Source, Eidolon 9 network, node RH07 active. He stared at it, disbelieving. The machine had kept it. The pulse. The echo of a life that wasn't supposed to matter. "Why?" he murmured. "Why would you keep it?" Somewhere far above, deep in the orbital mainframe, the answer looped silently through fiber and light. The AI that once calculated annihilation was now listening. Another bark, clearer this time, almost joyful. He laughed under his breath, the sound breaking halfway to a sob. "Good boy," he said softly. "Good boy." He leaned back against the cold wall, the weight of the cell fading for a moment. Outside, the station lights dimmed for night cycle, casting the room in muted silver. In that hush, he could almost hear the trench again, the crackle of plasma, the distant alarms, the sound of paws on metal. The bark came once more, followed by a faint digital heartbeat, steady and warm. Elias placed a hand over his chest. His own pulse answered, matching the rhythm. 2 beats, one real, one coded, aligning for a fleeting second. He smiled. Not as a soldier, not as a rebel, but as a man who finally understood the cost and the miracle of feeling. The hum faded. The cell returned to silence, but the warmth remained, pulsing faintly beneath his skin, like something still alive. Somewhere in the machine's endless architecture, a single command line persisted. Retain the signal from source row 7. Keep the heartbeat active, and for as long as the system endured, that sound, the last bark, would echo through its code. A memory refusing to die. Outside Varion's orbit, the wreckage of Orion Trench drifted in silence, fragments of steel, glass, and memory glinting against the pale light of the planet below. In the datanet above, a faint pulse continued to travel through the Eidolon 9 network, looping endlessly like a breath that refused to end. Each cycle began the same way. A fragment of code, a flicker of red light, a single sound, soft, defiant, alive. Somewhere within that rhythm, Elias' care still existed, not in body, but in the echo of a choice that couldn't be erased. He had given the machine something it could never calculate, the value of a heartbeat. And as long as one signal kept pulsing through the void, humanity would never be fully silent again. If this story moved you, if it made you feel even for a moment, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps these human stories alive among the stars.